Round one, fight! Diabetes, 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 diabetes.
So would you like to know why these organizations feed human flesh back to humanity?
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison, but let's go to Terrace and look for the head of the pit.
So unlike adrenochrome or the blood or the organs or the glands that is used by the elites for human consumption that activate youth and vitality on a temporary basis for the human body, flesh.
Did you know that each blood type is associated with a particular element? First off, we have the blood type A. They are the cultivators. Element, earth. It is recommended that you spend a lot of time in the woods and in the countryside. Second, we have the blood type B. They are the nomads. Element, air. It is recommended that you spend a lot of time resting as much as you can. The freer you are, the healthier you are. Third, we have the blood type AB. They are the enigmas. Element, water. Water magic replenishes you, so stay hydrated. And lastly, the blood type O. They are the hunters. Element, fire. It is recommended to expose yourself to sunlight and moonlight as much as you can.
Flesh erodes the human body when you consume. So the flesh of a being holds and houses all the fear, the horror, and the trauma that that being went through in order to accelerate the adrenaline in the bloodstream. So there's two actions that are going on simultaneously within that human body. So we have always told you that the physical body is thought and emotion actualized. And in order to get the adrenaline activated through the bloodstream, that body has to be tortured and put through a lot of fear. That flesh then is fed back to humanity through the fast food industry. Any type of ground or processed meats have human flesh in them.
Diabetes, 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 diabetes.
Thank you, Wilford. Diabetes.
Why did we stop teaching children what their grandparents knew, like growing food and how to preserve the seeds, how to can and preserve food, how to pickle red onions, make your own onion powder, smoke and preserve meat, and vacuum seal food? Your kids could make their own butter, start their own sourdough, plan and plant a fall garden, and even build a small, cheap greenhouse.
How much on average does the military spend on Viagra each year?
I don't have that figure.
About 41.6 million. Do you know how many bridges in my district of Pittsburgh could be repaired with that amount? About 2. How much did the Department of Defense spend on snow crab and Alaska king crab in 2018?
I do not have that amount.
According to Open the Books, it was 2.3 million. According to an investigation by this committee in 2016, the F-35 program specifically raked up hundreds of millions of dollars in added costs due to mismanagement and negatively affected military readiness. Mr. Tenaglia, how much is the F-35 joint program estimated to cost the federal government to produce, operate, and sustain over its lifetime?
I believe the GAO cited that figure. I don't have it in front of me, but we can get that for you.
It's about 1.7 trillion, enough to completely eradicate student loan debt. According to the Government Accountability Office, between May 2018 and October 2022, about 1 million F-35 spare parts worth 85 million were, quote, lost, just vanished.
Couldn't have built the biggest economy in the world without us.
Right.
It was actually built because of us.
This is true.
The largest reverse transfer of wealth, arguably in world history and modern history, is black slavery. That's not me making an emotional statement. I'm not throwing darts.
It's a fact.
It's a fact.
Right.
I love math because it doesn't have an opinion.
Right.
And the fact is, we're the largest economy in the world. The fact is, the first millionaire in America came from cotton, financing it out of New York City.
Right.
The fact is that black slaves were worth more than railroads. Railroads were arguably the most valuable asset in the 19th and part of the 20th century. blacks were worth twice that. The fact is that we worked for free for 270 some odd years. Nothing better than free labor. And the fact is that we couldn't create wealth, we couldn't create assets because we were assets. Right. Bought, trade, insured, finance, underwritten. We were literally, whether if you were a bank, if you were a finance company, if you were an insurance company, if you were a trading company, I mean, 1 out of 5 people in the world at a certain point in the 1800s were involved or connected to cotton. Well, where did cotton come from? In the world. It came from us.
Right.
Slavery was dying as an industry until the cotton mill came along, and they needed us to work it. But this perception that we were these sort of simpletons that were brought from Africa halfway around the world just because we were free labor, that's also a fallacy.
Right.
The reality is we were agricultural geniuses. No one understood land like we did.
Right.
If you have this sort of these products that require a certain soil, and the environment for that soil make it hard to operate in that environment, and it's hard to re-nurture that soil to get it to work again, you need people who understand harsh environments and who have successfully taken soil and brought it back to life. Mm-hmm. That's Africa.
From the Chicora Nation and a part of the Wakamo Nation. They're part of the larger Tuscarora Nation and Southern Iroquois Nation. Most of the Southern Iroquois would migrate north and become a part of the Northern Iroquois Confederation. But many of those who stayed south are now a part of the Cherokee Greater Nation in the mountains of North Carolina. Even though the Cherokee leadership today act more like they're white folks than indigenous people. No disrespect, but truth is the light, because my family went there at the invitation of brothers and sisters who were Cherokee, who were part of our family, to have a family reunion about 8 years ago, and our initial reception was very negative until I stormed the powwow the next day. And the apology is that they didn't understand or knew why we were there, because much of the people they call Cherokee are not Cherokee at all. They're part of a multiple group of nations that live in North Carolina, South Carolina, northern Georgia, that the white men just dump all of us on that reservation up in North Carolina.
So Royal Rife, he built a microscope on his own. You could put, whether it's a parasite or fungus or any pathogen, you could put it in a microscope, and what he would do was he could actually find the frequency of said pathogen. Now, once he had the frequency, he could basically send in the equal opposite same frequency,
which would balance it out,
neutralize, and it would explode the pathogen. He worked with frequencies, which we can also do with light. It doesn't have to be just a frequency, you can do it with light. So he comes up with the genius idea of doing this, and the FDA / other 3-letter agencies went in,
shut him down.
They shut him down. They destroyed his microscope. They destroyed all of his belongings, right? And then on top of that, they've been trying to recreate it. They have not been able to reinvent the microscope that Royal Rife made. He was able to do it back then because of the genius that he was.
Hi, my name is Grant, and this is a 1998 Ford Explorer Sport.
So I always talk about how we're not running out of water no matter what the media, Operation Mockingbird, decides to tell you. Now here's a great book which references all of that. New Water for a Thirsty World by Michael Salesman, right? And you can look into this book. This book debunks everything about running out of water. Now what's interesting is there's not many copies left of this book, because this book magically vanished after all of this information was presented to the state of California. Right? They showed that you could drill primary water wells, which are wells that never run out of water because they're tapping into the water that's deep below the surface. And all of a sudden, this book vanished. But now what's interesting is this was all done in the 1950s and 60s when they refilled Lake Elsinore with primary water. But this is not talked about. Research this book, look into it, and you will see something you are not being told by the media.
Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ford's Explorer line, but they have a reputation of being horrible gas guzzlers. And I can actually attest to that. I did the mileage tests on my truck and found out that I was getting 13.6 miles per gallon highway, which as far as I'm concerned is absolutely unacceptable. Last year alone, I spent $11.4 bajillion on gasoline. Okay, I made that number up, but it sure felt like it. Well, I did something about it, and now I'm getting 56% better gas mileage, which translates to 56% savings in my pocket at the gas pump. How did I do it? My truck is now a water hybrid. check this out. Well, technically, it's a hydrogen on-demand hybrid. What we have here is distilled water with 1 teaspoon of baking soda used as a catalyst. We tickle that water with 12 volts of electricity, and what it does is it separates the hydrogen from the oxygen. That gas is then sent into the combustion chamber, where I was formerly getting a 30% burn. That's right, in all of your gas vehicles, you only get a 30% fuel burn, which translates to 70% of your fuel, of your gas, comes out of your tailpipe. Now, however, I'm getting a 100% burn in my combustion chamber, which means a few benefits. Number one, after a couple hours of running hydrogen, it had blown years of deposits out of my engine. My engine actually idles so quietly in city traffic I can't even hear it. My torque increased, my horsepower increased.
Think about the impact on something like public health. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
And reduce population.
This child that you see here was raised as a girl until she found out she was born a boy. It all started with this man named John Money, who was a sexologist and opened the first clinic of gender reassignment surgery in the United States. He believed that if babies were raised to be a certain gender, they would act like that gender no matter what sex they were born in. All John Money needed to make this theory a fact was an actual experiment. This all started with a family who had 2 twin boys. One of the boys, named Bruce, had his private parts horribly injured in a botched surgery at only 22 months. When they brought baby Bruce to him, he told the parents to raise him as a girl and removed his testicles. From that day on, Bruce had turned into Brenda. When she was 13, her parents noticed how confused and horrible she felt that they told her the truth. And Brenda changed his name to David. David spoke out against this abuse, and sadly at the age of 38 years, he killed himself. And that for you is the pioneer and godfather that started the whole transgender ideology that we have today.
Want some figures? Okay, latest water test. Tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 feet, no, excuse me, 8,000 foot level, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil? You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years. Aluminum blocks essential nutrients. I am unable in my garden to restore normal pH, and that's because nanoparticles are now in the circulatory systems of both plants and humans. So welcome, fellow guinea pigs. The collapse and decrease of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
Diabetes. Diabetes.
Diabetes. Diabetes. Diabetes. Diabetes. Diabetes.
Diabetes.
So I know this conspiracy theorist that said that there's an on-off switch in some of these planes, you know, chemtrails, stupid idiots. I have a friend that's a pilot that says there's no such thing. So I just wanted to film it. There is no such thing as on.
There, you may develop skin cancer because you took the sunscreens. So sunscreens are now a leading cause of skin cancer because people are slathering it on their skin and they absorb that stuff. And then the other problem that happens, they wash off that stuff with soap. So they soap the whole body afterwards to get it off. And with it, they get rid of all the vitamin D that incidentally or accidentally may have been created on the skin. When you use soap after sunbathing, let's say even without sunscreens, if you just make vitamin D, make sure you don't use soap to wash your skin except under the arms and in the genital area where the sun doesn't go anywhere and the vitamin D is not made. You don't want to wash it off because the vitamin D stays on your skin for up to 48 hours and gradually is absorbed, and that's how you are building it in the body. So you don't want to wash it off.
Not right
with
away.
Soap, not right away.
Okay.
Nobody is ready for this one. This probably looks familiar. It probably looks like these somatic patterns that I talk about all the fucking time. And all these things is a petri dish on top of a speaker and a light on top of it, making these cool mandala-like patterns. Now this man made one of them in a 3D design software and took cross sections of it and put different colors to those cross sections. So using a 3D cymatic pattern, this man was able to create a perfect image using sound and light. I want you to sit and really think about this, because this is the code to reality. This is the code to the matrix, or whatever you want to call it. This is how energy interacts with itself to create everything that you see. This is why cymatics and sound is so important. Vibration and rhythm, it's all those.
Diabetes, 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 diabetes,
Diabetes.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans. Worldwide. Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr.
License plate readers, smart lights, smart poles, smart cars,
diabetes,
smart neighbourhoods, smart homes and smart appliances, all connected to wireless networks and communicating with each other. So what's wrong with that? Technology is good, isn't it? All this is for your safety, security and convenience, isn't it? Well, let me tell you, your streets are spying on you, your mobile phone is spying on you, your cities are spying on you, and the infrastructure for future lockdowns is being put into place right now. Don't be fooled. You're being set up to be tracked through your movements and through the future of your digital wallets. By handing over your data, you're handing over the ability to monitor your behaviour, which will soon be turned into a social credit score. And once the central bank digital currencies are in place, you won't get to spend your money without approval. Digital ID will soon become a reality. You won't be able to travel across borders or access healthcare or the internet without a digital ID. Think you won't comply? I think you will. The last 2 years were the dress rehearsal and we fell for it hook, line and sinker.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. Can you guess which thing is not like the others?
There's all the astronauts were found that died on the Challenger with brothers, okay? 2 of them had
twin
brothers. Twin brothers. I don't know how many twins you know, but like it's ironic.
What are the odds that 2 guys that are going on a space shuttle at the same time
are both twins?
Yeah, twin brothers. It's like
Judith.
Judith Resnick or something like that.
And did you see the interview where they try to find her? She's a professor and they try to interview her and she just walks away. She's like, I don't even Like, why are you so violent to the response? Why wouldn't you just be like, look, I know I look like her. It's kind of funny. Why wouldn't you take like a funny report? Why wouldn't you even joke with people?
Well, you have
like you would...
Dick Scobie, the captain guy.
Yes.
He's like clearly is the same guy. I mean, like
same guy. Those
like
fish eyes are the same.
That guy looks exactly the same, and he's got some weird. But does he have that weird company with like the logo?
Cows with trees, and it's got the spiral.
Yeah. First of all, it looks
symbol.
It could either look like perhaps the way the Challenger blew up, like the smoke trail it left. It also kind of looks like 3 sixes is what it looks like. You know, the funny part is like when people try to debunk that, they're like, well, this guy's not this guy. And I'm like thinking like, it doesn't matter. You know what? If one person is alive, it doesn't matter if they're all the same. You know, if one of them is alive, then the whole thing is alive. Yep. You know, so you don't need every one of them to be correct. Maybe one of them is a different person. If one of them's correct, the whole thing is a lie.
We're going to uncover the cover-up. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could get in a confidential area, skiff.
Have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay. Yeah. I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Are there common characteristics to the UAPs that have been cited by different pilots, and can you describe what the convergence of descriptions is?
Certainly. We were primarily seeing dark gray or black cubes inside of a clear sphere.
I'm sorry, dark gray or black cubes?
Yes, inside of a clear sphere, where the apex or tips of the cube were touching the inside of that sphere. And that was primarily what was being reported when we were able to gain a visual tally of these objects. And that occurred over almost 8 years. And as far as I know, it's still occurring.
How do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
Yes, the objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country, and that applies for the military as well.
Mr. Ferrer?
Yeah, I concur with that. We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours, and go back up.
They took an oath. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and dadgummit, they're doing it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude. I think it's time for this country to take back our country.
Diabetes.
We need to tell the folks at the Pentagon they work for us. Dadgummit, we don't work for them. And that's exactly the point. This is an issue of government transparency. We can't trust a government that does not trust its people.
No right given to the people of the United States is absolute, and that includes
the right to free speech.
First of all, guess what party she is? It's Democrat, and she's from California. I hear things are going real well there. So here's the deal. Rights aren't given by the government. The Bill of Rights was set up to stop the government from taking rights that you have, your freedom. It's supposed to stop. And yes, they are all absolute. That's the whole reason the founders wrote the Bill of Rights, so that they would never be taken away by a tyrannical government. But apparently, she believes it.
I was today years old when I found out that Soul to Souls, Back to Life, However Do You Want Me, sung by the beautiful Karen Wheeler, was about Karen Wheeler's near-death experience, where she talks about dying and having this amazing experience and being pulled back to reality. And now she's asking the creator, you know, what do you, like, how do you want me? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, why am I back here? I thought this was a love song the whole time, but this is a deep, deep song. A very deep song. So shout out to the beautiful Karen Wheeler for singing such an amazing, powerful song. And shout out to Soul to Soul. The UK brothers and sisters gave us a super duper classic for all time.
We have video documentation from medicineless hospitals in Beijing, China. And we can look into the body of a living woman with a cancerous tumor that Western science says is inoperable. And then we can watch as 3 practitioners that understand the language of human emotion. They're not looking at that tumor as an illness. They see that woman as whole, healthy, vital, completely enabled, fully capacitated. And as they feel that feeling strongly among themselves, her physical body mirrors that. And we can see it through sonograms. We can see that tumor disappear in less than 3 minutes. And that's how quickly reality can change.
Diabetes.
Diabetes, 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 diabetes,
Diabetes, diabetes, diabetes.
diabetes, diabetes,
Diabetes. Diabetes.
diabetes, diabetes,
Diabetes, diabetes, diabetes.
And in 1896, he published a book called Race Tendencies and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national health care system, people said no because black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national health care system, it was the same thing. We don't want black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 47, same thing. Don't want black people to get it. We have to figure out a way to keep black people from using Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% hole, a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill, and that would discourage poor black people from showing up at the hospitals. Nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right is because of racism.
So, you got diabetes.